I think it's time for us to recognize something that I think has been we've been obfuscating about for some time, which is there is this great pretense that we're all very concerned in Europe about mass immigration, and you can speak to Lib Dem politicians and they'll tell you, oh yeah, immigration is a big problem, because they hear it on the doorstep, of course. But I think if we were being really honest, we would recognize that, for example, we don't seem to be that concerned about the fact that hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have come to our country in recent years. They don't seem to be causing any problems.
Left and right are pretty pleased at the generosity that the Brits have shown.
Yeah, and rightly so. What about Hong Kongers? Are we deeply concerned about a few 100,000, as I understand it, or maybe 100-something thousand Hong Kongers coming here as refugees? I don't get any anti-Hong Kong sentiment recently. Over 1 million Polish people came. It was disruptive to some extent, and labour market. But the brickies who lost their jobs because Polish lads were willing to do it for slightly less, I don't remember them hating Poles or saying Poles should be removed. I remember people talking about the importance of keeping the numbers sensible. I remember people talking about the need to make sure the labour market, these people are not being taken advantage of, as many of them were being taken advantage of. So we were having a conversation of a very different type. I think if we're all being very honest, the rise of anti-immigration parties, as they're called, in truth, is a concern about the rise of Islam in Western Europe.
Hard to disagree.
Let's be honest, right? Now, the question then is, what do we do about that? Because I think that most people, is my sense, most people don't actually have any particular problem with Muslims per se. What I think they have a problem with is the extreme manifestations of some particular ways of thinking within that group of people, which we might call Islamism, let's say. And the argument is there, and I break it down. I think there are different schools of thought. I mean, obviously, the progressive response is there is no problem. There's no such thing as Islam. And look at the far right over here, the far right, the far right, the far right, which I think is dishonest. I think we can all recognize that the overwhelming majority of our fellow citizens who are Muslim are decent, normal people with whom we're perfectly capable of coexisting. At least that's my perspective. But we also have to recognize that 75% of MI5's terror caseload is Islamic extremism. 90% of the people on their terror watch list are Islamist extremism. If you look at the number of people who are being killed in their attacks and all sorts of other things that are going on there, it's a problem of a unique kind. Now, the question is, what do we do about that? And by the way, where do we think it comes from? There are two schools of thought, I think, between the people who are willing to acknowledge that reality. One is to say, read the Quran. Look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad. And this is, these people will say, a violent book, a violent ideology, with a violent history. And so when you, Konstantin, say we can coexist with our Muslim brothers and sisters, you are just ignorant to the reality of what this faith represents, which that's an argument we can have. I don't think it's a particularly useful argument at this stage, simply because we have a very significant Muslim population, and that is a reality that I don't think we're ever going to get away from. And so the question is, how do we encourage the forces within the Muslim community who are willing to integrate, who are willing to be peaceful and moderate and sensible? And also, how do we deal with the extremists? And what I saw in Uzbekistan, this is a very long introduction to what I'm trying to articulate, is a country which has no radical Islam in it, really, where it's a Muslim country, but Christians and Jews are not persecuted. Alcohol is sold everywhere. Islamic dress is not only not pushed, but actually, some girls wear hijabs and some girls wear skirts. And the burqa is banned in public. You cannot have a job. You can't work for the government if you want to display overtly religious dress, or even beards for men. I'm not suggesting that we bring that here particularly. A lot of hipsters would be in trouble. But
this is a Muslim majority country, yes, that has emerged from 70 years of Soviet communism, that has in effect, it sounds like a secular, mildly autocratic government allowing, allowing a relative degree of freedom, personal freedoms, and a wide variety of compliance with standard Islamic dress codes and preferences.
You kind of wear what you want,
Right.
actually. So it's not really being. In fact, I think the forces that are pushing against the government are the Islamic forces, which are trying to encourage more young people to adopt this. But the government is very strong. There's a great irony that the first president of Uzbekistan was called Islam Karimov, and he was known for being very firm of not allowing religious extremism to flourish. Anyway, this is very long-winded, but my point is this. I think the debate about whether, it's Islamic extremism or Islam fails to recognize the reality on the ground, which is there are lots of Muslims in Britain, and we're going to have to coexist in some way. Now, how do we do that? Well, I think the way we do that is to recognize that actually, if you look at it objectively, we in Europe have been much weaker on dealing with extremism than most Muslim countries. Hizb ut-Tahrir, which has only very recently been banned in this country, has been banned in almost every Muslim country in the world for decades now. I have people that I know who come from places like the UAE who come to Britain and say, I cannot believe what you allow extremists in this country to do. And so my argument is not that we need authoritarianism. My argument is we have to make a very clear delineation between moderate Muslims and extremists. And we have to say, if you want to be moderate and sensible, you are welcome. And not only that, we will go out of our way to help you become part of our society. We will be extra welcoming and friendly. I don't have any problem with being extra welcoming and friendly to people who want to become part of our society. I think we ought to be, actually, if we've allowed them to come to our country. But on the other hand, we have to be extraordinarily intolerant of the intolerant, and particularly of the extremes. And we should be looking at everything we can do on that front. And that's what they do in many Muslim countries. And I think we frankly should be learning from them at this point.